Hello, welcome back. Or more to say, welcome back, me. I have been away for a little bit. I've been holding some holidays and been having some time off, but I've also been training some stuff in Blender. As you can see right here, I've been playing around with hairs once again. And I've been reading your comments. So this is made in the new Blender hair system. So I've been playing around with that, tweaking settings left and right. And I've actually got a nice surprise for you in this tutorial as well. So this is what we're going to be making, at least somewhat like that. It may look a little bit different because hairs are of course random. So that's what we're going to be working on. So let's pop into Blender. We've got the default monkey set up and I'm going to add a modifier of 2 subdivisions. There we go. Right, so how does the new hair system work? Well, you need to add something to this monkey and it's not a particle system. We're going to select it, Shift A, curve, add empty hair. So now you'll see we have a new tab in the Suzanne outlined right there and it's called curves. And you get a new tab right there as well with the curve selected. And that already shows you one important thing, and that is that it needs a UV map. So if you have an object that is not UV unwrapped, it will not work. So you will need to unwrap it first, whether that is by hand or having an automatic unwrapper or smart UV projecting it, it will all work fine. Suzanne is unwrapped by default, so that's nice. Something else to keep in mind is that the speed of your hair system and the performance of it depends on the details of your geometry. Which means that if you have a lot of subdivisions or a lot of geometry, it will work much slower. Alright, so if you don't have the time to completely retopologize your object, you can simply add a sculpt to pretty much cheat your way around that. And what I mean by that is just adding a new object, let's say a circle, setting that above where you want your hairs, fill this up, and we're going to be adding a little bit of geometry by just scaling this up a few times like that. And we're just going to add a shrink wrap modifier like that, and we're going to target our nice old Suzanne. I usually set this on project and we need it in the negative Z direction. There we go. So this is the sculpt method and you can just apply this and parent it to Suzanne if you need. And then just add your hairs, your empty hairs to the sculpt, which has a much better geometry than, for example, if you sculpted something with dino topology enabled, right? So this is something you can use. All right. We don't need to do that because Suzanne has a very nice geometry from itself. So how do we work with these empty hairs? Well, if we select our curves, we can go to sculpt mode, just like that. And now we get all these new brushes. At least some of them are new and some of them were already used in the particle systems. But the most important one is the add, which means we can just add hairs. Alright, so the default setting is 1 count, so you will add 1 hair a time. Amazing. So the fun thing is with the new hair system, we don't need a lot of hairs to start off with. So what I do is just create pretty much the hairline first, right? So I'm creating a hairline just like that, hairline, and what you can do actually is Control Z this a few times, and you can now enable the symmetry here. And that is something that just was lacking a lot in the usually hairs. You had to do everything twice. So we can add hairs right there, and it will be mirrored perfectly. And that will also work when you're going to turn to the other tools later. And I'll show you that as well. But I'm now just gonna draw a little bit of a hairline on this monkey. And you can of course customize your own hairline because it's your own model. We don't need a lot of hairs. You see me only adding a few, and that's just to outline where I want hairs and where I don't. And now comes the nice part. So the second option is delete, which does exactly what it says, it deletes hairs. But we're going to be using the density for now. And if you press F, and let me enable my screencast key so you can see my shortcuts. So you can now just press Shift R and swipe your mouse and you will see the density of hairs you'll be adding. Alright, so you don't need that many. something like this. And now you can just draw in between the hairs you just added, and it will add density to your hair. And this is actually already too much. I'm gonna press Shift R and just swipe this up a little bit more, like that. Right, so you can just add density, and the nice thing is that it is a fixed density. So if you go twice over the same area, it won't add more density than it can have. For example, I see that I have hit the air at some point. So I'm just gonna redo this a little bit like that. And if you increase your brush size, the density will pretty much stay the same. Beautiful. So just fill that up nicely like this. And now we can just comb it like we would do in regular particle systems as well, right? So like this. And sometimes it may feel a little bit weird, like why is it not picking up all the hairs in my combing? Well, that's because it's set on sphere. We can also set this to projected, which is pretty much the same as it will work in combing your hairs in the default particle system, right? So I'm not sure what kind of hair I want to make yet. Just gonna make some fun stuff. Make sure to always look at your hairs from all perspectives, right? So we still have the symmetry enabled, so keep that in mind as well. And we can just sculpt away, and make whatever we think should be on this monkey's head, right? Perhaps something like this. Maybe we want to turn symmetry off and just swipe this to the right a little bit, because symmetry can, in organic things like hair, usually be one of the things that just reduces the realism of it, right? Because hair is organic, it just follows laws of physics with gravity, and it depends on how much gel or wax or whatever you put in your hair. And I will show you now the snake hook, which is an amazing tool, and it basically means that you can drag out some of these hairs. For example, you want some kind of random hairs there, you can just drag them out. Or if you want this to be longer, you can drag that out as well, just like that. And that's amazing, right? It just allows you to tweak your hairs so easily. Next up, we've got the grow and shrink. Shrink, that's exactly what it says. Grows and shrink depending on plus or minus. And we have got the pinch. So let's say we want this tip to be pinched together. We can just do that with the pinch brush, right? So you can see everything will be pinched together. Projected selected will of course be a little bit stronger, like that. We can do the same for a few different parts of the mesh to create some texture perhaps. Make sure to look at it in other directions as well, not only from the front, what I have been doing for the past few minutes. So just create some textures. And it doesn't matter if it looks too perfect right now, because we will be adding some of those noises and curls in the geometry nodes later. Alright, so something like this works nice already. Alright, so how do we proceed from here? Well, very easy, because this is where the surprise comes in. I have created a file, and it's based on, where is my image? It is based on this, where you can just append geometry node setups from. For example, short hair geometry nodes, braid geometry nodes, long hair geometry nodes, curl geometry nodes. You can all just append them and use them. Alright, so this is not an actual geometry node tutorial. This is just a tutorial of how to use the hair system and use geometry nodes to make it look good as well. Alright, so what we want to do is first open up the geometry tab so we can actually see a little bit of what is happening. By default, we have a deform curves on surface node in between those two, and that is just to make our hair or our curves, because each hair is pretty much a curve, so a spline. It will follow the actual shaping that we did, so the combing and stuff like that. So that's an important one. And now we can just add new nodes if we want to make these curves look like whatever we want. We can even turn them into meshes. We can even use different objects instead of these hairs. We can do so much in geometry nodes. But I'm gonna make this easy for you guys. You don't have to play around with these nodes yourself. So what we can do is go to File and Append and look for that file that you downloaded. I put it in the comments. It is on Gumroad. And the price is 0. It's free. You can, of course, support me if you'd like. I'd highly appreciate it, of course. But you can also just get it for free and you'll have the same file. Alright, so I'm going to go to my tutorial file pretty much and find my hair geometry nodes. So it's called devoq hair geometry nodes. And you will have a node tree map with some different geometry nodes. Beautiful. So some of these you will use for pretty much all hair systems, like the hair thickness. Some of them you will use for specific things, like the braid. Alright, so we have short hair now, so I'm just gonna add the short noisy hair base. And we have to set that there, short noisy hair base. There we go. Amazing already. So I've got some default settings set up here that will match pretty much the default size of these objects as well, so that's nice. And I have some default settings as well there, which includes, for example, the density. And I've also got the hair density spread, which basically means that these strands that you add, so the density, it will be further apart a little bit, so they will match a bit more, for example. So if I swipe this up, you can see that it's just gonna match a tiny bit better like that. Alright, something else you may see is that it's very pointy at the end, which is basically the clumping going on. So the endpoint clumping is set on 0 by default. You can swipe this up so they all go outwards a little bit in the end. And you can set the starting points to 1, which means that they are just starting and at the locations that they are set. And you can also swipe them down so they are going to be moving closer together. Depends on your personal preference. Right, and we have those noise settings as well. You can see that we have some curly noise going on already, which we can just tweak with the noise scale. It's going to add stronger noise, or the noise strength, or sorry, scale is just going to be the pretty much the frequency of the noise, and the noise strength will define how strong this noise is. Right, so that's looking nice. Something else that I added in here, a little other surprise. Well, it's not a surprise, it's more just part of the system that is not really in this image yet. And that is, I added some loose strands there. Alright, so you can see some loose points there sticking out that don't really follow the geometry. And that's just to match the real life a little bit. You always have some hair strands that do whatever they want, that don't follow the rules of hair for some reason, that are just gonna be sticking out, right? So that's what I try to add there as well. Right, so you can tweak those little hair strands as well, and I actually didn't include that here yet, which is what I'm gonna do now, so you will not have to look for that during your own creation of hair. So this top part with the color ramp and the noise texture defines those loose hair strands, so we can add and decrease the amount of those hair strands with this button right there. So the amount of strands that will be in your scene. So I'm gonna swipe that into the geometry entry, which basically means that we're gonna add a new input, right? So this is going to be the loose hair density. I spelled that wrong. Density. Just like that. And we also have the loose hair. Let's see. We have the noise right there. And we have the vector right there. So this is gonna add, for example, how much it's going to move out of your mesh. So I want this one to be added as well. Right there. So this is going to be the loose hair noise strength. Just like that. And let's see, one more thing that we want is the scale. So the loose hair noise scale. Just like that. You can tweak those settings now. I will make sure to add that to the final file so you won't have to look for that. Right, so you can now tweak those settings as well beautifully to make some longer parts stick out, for example. Alright, so that's just natural. Amazing. Now, how do we add braids and stuff? Very easy. Even easier than this, actually. What we want to do is select our monkey. And each time I'm going to be adding a new kind of hair, a new style of hair. So this is going to be different from the short hair. I'm going to make a new empty hair. So select the monkey. Go to curve. go to empty hair, and we're going to file. Actually, let's go back to the first setting first, because we forget one crucial thing, and that is hair thickness. It won't have the right thickness if we're not doing so in the geometry nodes, right? So we need to give each of these curves a new thickness. So we're gonna go File, Append, and I'm gonna add hair thickness, add modifier, geometry nodes, and this is going to be hair thickness. The default settings will be all right. Okay, now you can even add curls to this system if you'd like by going to File, Append, Curls, add modifier, geometry nodes, add that in front of the thickness, and then just select the curls there. So now your hair will curl around a little bit nicer, right? So you can see it all going to the right a little bit, curling up nicely. You can decrease those settings, for example, the amplitude. If you want it to be less strong, you can do it. If you want it to be stronger, you can do it. Frequency, you can change it. I'm just going to leave it like this for now. Right, important thing to note is that if we append that first group, so the short noisy hair base, there is one node right there, object info, and it uses the Suzanne 0.001 by default. And that basically defines where those hairs are going to connect to, right? So those new hairs that is added with the density, they're going to connect to this object. So it's important that you set this to the object that your curves are on. So it's Suzanne, and the reason it appends the other Suzanne from the other file is because that is included in the geometry nodes, right? So we don't need it, so we can delete that. Just make sure that this object info is set to your actual object. And I will swipe this into the starting socket for you guys, so you will just be able to change that in the modifier list and won't have to go through the nodes to find that. All right, so make sure that your object will match your actual hair object as well. So I'm gonna swipe this to the top real quick. Give me a second. There we go. Just like that. Now, the braids. How are we gonna take care of that? Easy. Select Suzanne, Shift A. Curve, empty hair. Beautiful. Now, File, Append, braid base. Now, to do something with that braid base, we first need hairs, of course. So go to Sculpt mode, hit that Add, and each hair, each single strand, will add one hair, or sorry, one braid. So one hair will turn into one braid with the geometry node settings of the braid base. And the braid control as well. So we're gonna be adding a braid where we want it to be. There, but it's too short. So first things first, go to curve shape and set that length to, let's say 1.8. This is gonna be a beautiful long braid. And I'm going to do the other side, set the curve length to like 0.8 and add a new braid there. All right, so I'm now just gonna go to my comb and I'm just gonna swipe this down. Like how do I want this to fall? I can define that myself perfectly. This one has to go down there a little bit, I guess. That's looking nice. Beautiful braid. It's gonna be a beautiful braid, I hope. Like that. So one hair for each braid. Now let's add a modifier, geometry nodes, and set that to your braid base. There we go. It's already braiding a little bit. All right, so we've got some settings, which are basically the width and the height. So that's going to be the thickness of your braid pretty much. And the viewport won't match what you see in the render at all. At all. So you will have to tweak this in your actual render view later. But for now it's fine, because we still have to add another geometry node. So File, Append, and we need to braid density plus loose hairs. We don't need braid control. We just need to braid density. So this one you can pretty much ignore. So add this one and add modifier, geometry nodes, and set this to the braid density plus loose hairs. And it will add density to the braids, and it will once again add those loose hairs as well that we had at the top. So it will just make some realistic with hairs in addition. Next up, we need another geometry nodes, and we need the hair thickness once again. Amazing. Great. What next? Well, We want to create some long hairs now. Of course, I want to show you all the settings that we can. So I'm going to select my Suzanne, Shift A, curve, empty. Remember, for each hair system, I'm going to add a new empty. And I'm going to go to sculpt mode. I'm going to hit that plus to add hairs. And I want some long hairs there right at the bottom. Just going to add the outline first. Something like that. And I want it to be overlapping a little bit with the short hair. So it looks like it is somehow made that way. So something like that. It is not really long enough yet. So I'm just going to add some length there. So grow it out, for example. On projected, and I'm just going to grow those hairs a little bit like so. The sides as well. I don't really like the grow tool because it does exactly random stuff, because you can't really get an even length in those hairs. So what I'm going to do is just Ctrl Z this all the way and set my my hair settings. Let's go to the plus. Curve shape. I'm just going to set the length to like 2 meters. And now I'm going to add some more hairs. There. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Amazing, right? And then I'm just going to groom this to show you something. So I'm just going to groom this in a basic shape like so. How would hair fall from the back of your head? Something like this, I guess. From the front. Out a little bit, in a little bit. I'm not sure. Hair is random, be random. Let's go with this. And now we can just increase the density. So if we do that, go to density and Shift R. Shift R and just increase this a little bit. If we now just add more density, you can see that it doesn't match the settings of the hair and the direction of the hair. So it's much shorter. And it is going straight. So what we want to do is swipe this to the right, hit curve shape, and interpolate length and shape. And that will make sure that it follows the other hairs around it. Just like that. So now you can just brush over it, add density where you need it, and be done with that. Beautiful, right? And you can always just sculpt it after. Let's say I'm not very satisfied with the way it looks. I can just sculpt it now, and I'm just gonna sculpt this straight down, and then give it some swirls, because I'm gonna be making most of these curls and noisy hairs in the geometry nodes anyway. So I don't have to do that with the comb brush at all, like that. Something like this. That's looking nice, I guess. All right, so. Let's go to object mode and let's add a new geometry node. First things first, I'm going to add those curls. And the reason I'm adding curls first is because that will just leave us some room to add density after the curls. So those curls will be more visible in the next geometry node steps. I mean, the strands of hair will be more visible, because you first add the curls and you will then add density to the hairs that already are curled, if that makes sense. Alright, so we can change the amplitude, just like this, and we can change the frequency. You want it curved quickly, or you want to have larger curls. You can all set that yourself, like that. Alright, another geometry nodes, and we're going to File, Append. And we now want long curly hair plus density. And it doesn't have to be curly, so you can pretty much just use this for straight hair as well. But it will add a lot of density, and it will have some noise in there as well that you can add or decrease depending on what you're looking for, right? So we have a hair density, and we also have the hair density spread, just as we had for short hair. So we can spread that out at the start a little bit more if we want, just so it looks a little bit more natural, right? And we have some noise chaos. That's fun. Now we have a lot of settings. I won't go through all of them. They will speak for themselves. I named them. What you can look at is those loose hair strands. Again, realism. So we can tweak those. So there are going to be some loose hair strands sticking out of our hair. That's always going to add some detail. We have some clumping, of course. That is always nice. We can have very sharp edges or some less sharp edges. And I'm going to add some more noise, I guess, because it looks a little bit too straight in my opinion. Something like that. Right, beautiful. So now let's actually go to render view. Actually, we first need to add one more geometry node setting. And you know what it is. It is the hair thickness. If you're going to go to render mode in cycles, without doing that, it will appear very thick and it will make your computer crash. And we don't want that. So go to your rendered settings and set this to cycles and GPU. There we go. Now just go to rendered view and see what happens. There we go. We already have some nice hairs. And you can see those braids look perfect. Right? And the reason they look nice is because in the settings I added a few features where the braids settings are pretty much dependent on the braid length. So what I can do is just sculpt this braid, for example, to be longer with the snake hook. And it will follow the settings. It will follow all the settings perfectly and it will remain a braid for the length that you make it. So that's something that I really enjoy. Right, I'm going to go to my camera view and I'm just gonna position this wherever I want. Let's say I want it right there. I'm gonna make this into a square so we can see a little bit more of that hair. Zoom in and I'm gonna rotate for dynamic poses. You know how it is. Move this up a little bit perhaps so we can see some of that bottom hair and some of that top hair. So, oh, I really love that. This one turns out quite nice, I hope. Something like this, and I'm just going to save my file, don't forget it. Hair test. And next up, I'm going to select my braid. I don't like this one sticking out that far. So I'm going to go to sculpt mode and comb it back in a little bit. Just like that. Wow, look at that. Amazing. And we can even just make this longer, like I said, snake hook it and swipe it to the bottom and it will just be a braid falling all the way down. Amazing. So that was a little bit too long for my liking. Something like this will do. And you can swipe this out a little bit more so it sticks up and then falls down, for example. You can do a lot with it, like I said. Something like this works fine for now. Beautiful. Right, those hairs on the top look nice and soft as well. You can select it and tweak some of these settings if you don't like it. For example, the noise strength. If you want this to be more smooth, you can just change those settings, right? Always go to viewport if you're not sure. We can add more density if needed, like that. And we can even decrease the spread a little bit in case we want more strands to be visible. Okay, and let's see, we still had some curls, so we can decrease that if we want to make it look very smooth, or we can just decrease the density a little bit or increase it to have more curly hair. Amazing. Let's see how this looks. So now we have one short hair system, one long hair system, and one braid system. So let's actually set up some lighting. I want to show you guys how to light hair nicely. Alright, so now we have one light in the scene. And actually we don't even have a material yet. So select your hair, go to materials, hit plus, hit new, and we're going to change the principled BSDF to a principled hair BSDF. There it is. Right, and I'm going to set this on melanin and swipe this down. I want some blonde hair, I guess. Blonde with a little bit of redness, radial roughness. I'm going to swipe that up and the roughness down a little bit. Amazing, look at this. Wow. I'm going to select my long hair, apply that same material, and the same for the braids. Just like that. Easy as hell. Right, to make things look even better, we're going to go to the environment and we're going to set this to an environment texture, open downloads, and search for HDRI or HDR. If you don't have one, polyhaven.com has free HDRIs. Completely free. Downloadable, usable for any case. Alright, so what I use is, let's see, I usually like some hard lighting in my scenes with hair because it adds some nice reflection. Alright, so what I'm gonna be using, I don't know yet. Which one looks nice? Perhaps Cape Hill has some strong lights. Oh, that has some strong lights. Wow. All right. First things first. I'm going to go to my render settings, film, and make that background transparent. And I'm going to go to my world settings, swipe this window to the left, and set this to shader. And I'm going to change this to world and set my texture, select it, and press Ctrl T. That way we have a mapping node and we can control the rotation of the environment. If you can't press Ctrl T or nothing happens, don't worry, go to Edit, Preferences, go to Add-ons and just search for Node Wrangler. And we can enable this by checking the box. Make sure to press the menu icon and save your preferences. And now you can select it and press Ctrl T and this will appear. Nice. Right, let's rotate this a little bit, find that right angle. If rotating it goes slowly, we can go to the settings in the world and set this to manual. And that means that the resolution will be limited and we can just rotate this quicker, right? So we can see the changes of those rotations way faster, like that. So how do we want to rotate this actually? I did not have a plan in mind yet. I guess something like this works already quite nicely. Let's rotate it a little bit further. Maybe something like this is nice as well. And here comes the trick with hair. Here comes the trick. Press Shift A. Add a light. Area light. Move it behind our hair and rotate it so it focuses on the head. Move it a little bit above. Now just increase that size and go to your camera view. And I'm going to move this a little bit behind my actual head like that. Amazing. And move it even bigger. And then just crank the volume, or sorry, the strength up, the power. And we can just move it even more back and make it bigger. And you will see that it gets us this amazing edge lighting of hair and it will shine right through it. And that's just something that I really love about hair, because those pointy parts are always a little bit more shine through. I'm not sure if that's a word, but I'm using it. That just shows you the actual thickness of the hair a little bit better, right? So we can even change the colors to give a nice tint on the hair, for example, some orange tint or blue, depending of course on what your scene is. So that's looking very nice. And I'm just gonna rotate my environment around a little bit because I don't like it. And that's the nice part. We can just play around with this as much as we like. So how about we keep it at something like this? And I'm gonna select my hair, go to the shader of the object, and I'm just gonna change the melanin a little bit. I don't really like the color. Well, it was a nice color, but it didn't really show all the details. So we may have to just crank this up to be brown. Because now we see a lot more detail in those actual hairs. Maybe even darker. Dark brown hair. Looks nice. Looks really nice. Something like that. Maybe even make it red. Why not? I'm just playing around. I will chill. I will chill it a little bit. Otherwise, this is gonna be a long tutorial. Right. So brown hair. Brown hair is gonna be it. Now we still need a background. I just want to make this a final render. So I'm gonna add a new plane. Move that to the back. Rotate it around X a little bit. And let's see how that compares to the camera. Move this. Scale it so it covers the camera section. Press Ctrl B to draw a little box. There we go. And I'm just gonna make this box black. New material, black. I'm gonna decrease the specular a little bit so it is actual black. Don't really decrease the specular if you are working in a realistic scene, but it's just the background now, so it doesn't matter. Something like this. I'm gonna select Suzanne. Do I want to make this another color? We can, but do I want to? Right, you can see that we still have the second Suzanne now, right? And this is something that I wanted to mention but forgot. So did I actually mention it? I'm not sure. I will just say it again. If we append a geometry node setup that includes, for example, I will show you. If it includes the geometry info, So for example, I think the long curly hair density node has it right there. So what I will do is connect this right there for you guys, so you won't have to look for it the same way I did. It is the object. I think I already showed you this. And then I'm just going to swipe this to the top under geometry. And so this object has to be set on your original Suzanne that the hair system is also applied to, and we can just delete the second Suzanne, right? So make sure that each geometry node setup you add, make sure to set that object to Suzanne. Okay, that will just make your life a little bit easier. Right, so the same for the short hairs. I think we already did it for the short. Yeah, we already did it. For the braids, I think there has to be one for the braid as well. Did I add one for the braids? Not really. I mean, we are not really... No, we are not displacing the braid, so it doesn't really matter. Let's see the braid density. Is it here? No, so we don't need one there. Okay, that's good. Alright, so this is pretty much the final render then. Amazing. I'm just gonna make a new material for my actual Suzanne. Set that to black. I don't know why, I just like the way it looks. And I'm going to go to shader editor right there for my hair. And I just, for some reason, feel white hair at the moment. Just sounds nice to me. I don't know why. We can make it darker. Make some darker gray hair. So old people hair. Or if you like to dye your hair gray, that's also good. Alright, something like this. And I'm just going to rotate my environment around a little bit more. To just get some more detail in that hair. That's always important. Something like this. Look at how beautiful this hair looks. I really love it. Alright, I'm gonna render this out and then I'll be back and we can watch the results together. Alright, see you in a second. Well, the render is done and the results are in. I'm actually glad we went for the gray hairstyle. It fits perfectly within the theme or the vibe that I tried to set that randomly popped into mind. Alright, so you may notice one change that I made, and that's for the top hair to be a little bit more curly anyway. So I added more curl amplitude and a little bit of noise. So that is something I changed quickly, as well as the width of the camera, because I do want to use this image for my thumbnail as well. So this is exactly the image that you have been seeing at the start. So what you see is what we create, and I like that a lot. So the hair system, wow, what an amazing system. It works for short hair, it works for long hair, it works for braids, it works for curls. You can use it for straight hair. And it is very easy with the things that are already set up. For example, the geometry nodes that you can just append from that Blender file that I include. You can work so fast with different hairstyles. It is insane. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you now know a little bit more about how those hairstyles work, or those new hair systems. I know I haven't gone into a lot of detail about geometry nodes, but I want to save that for a different tutorial. So how can we set up our own hair system, for example, or how can we use the new hair system curves and splines for something completely different. So if that's something that you're interested in or want to find out, please let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do leave a like or a comment or subscribe. One of those things will make me very happy. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.